Commander Elias had seen many strange things in his life. He had walked on barren moons, navigated asteroid storms, and faced hostile alien forces. But nothing could prepare him for the moment he stepped onto the Queen's ship. The doors opened silently, revealing a world that seemed alive. Light flowed like liquid over walls of unknown metal. The air was warm and sweet, carrying a soft hum that made Elias's chest tighten with awe. It felt alive, as if the ship itself was breathing. His mission was simple on paper: enter the ship, check the condition of the alien queen, and report back to his superiors. But reality was always different. Elias could feel the weight of the unknown pressing against his chest. Every instinct in him shouted caution, yet curiosity pushed him forward. He moved carefully, each step making a soft echo that seemed loud in the vast, quiet chamber. At the center of the ship was a room unlike any Elias had seen. Crystals floated in the air, glowing softly with a gentle blue light. The floor reflected the ceiling, and the ceiling reflected the floor, making it seem like he was walking in the middle of a starfield. And there, on a levitating platform, lay the queen. Her body was unlike anything human, elegant and complex. Limbs folded like ribbons, wings folded neatly behind her back, and her skin shimmered with faint, changing colors. But what struck Elias most were her eyes. They were deep, endless pools, like she carried entire galaxies inside her. He froze for a moment, unable to look away. A figure stepped forward, and Elias's heart jumped. The nurse. She was tall, her skin glowing faintly, eyes shining like molten silver. She moved with grace, each step measured and calm. "Commander Elias," she said in a voice that was soft, musical, and calm. "The queen awaits you." Elias's lips twitched into a nervous smile. "Yes, baby," he said, almost as a joke, trying to break the tension. The nurse paused. Her eyes widened just slightly, then sparkled as if the word held some deep meaning. She bowed, and with a voice that seemed to hum in harmony with the ship itself, she whispered, "Spouse." Elias froze. The word hit him like a meteor in the silence of space. "Spouse?" He repeated in his mind, disbelief mixing with confusion. He had not expected recognition, not like this, not from these beings. Yet, the nurse's tone was not mocking. It was warm, gentle, welcoming, and filled with certainty. He finally moved forward, slowly, each step heavier than the last. The queen's platform adjusted slightly, sensing his presence. She opened her eyes fully, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. Her gaze fixed on him, not with curiosity, not with fear, but with something Elias could not name. Something deep, as if she had been waiting for him, or someone like him, for centuries. "Commander." The nurse whispered again, stepping aside, "Approach without fear. She will not harm you." Elias swallowed hard. Every nerve in his body screamed caution, but every instinct in his heart urged him closer. He could feel the tension in the air, the quiet hum of energy that made his skin tingle. And yet, amidst the strangeness, there was something profoundly human about the moment. He felt needed, recognized, and perhaps even welcomed. The queen's lips moved slightly, a soundless acknowledgement, and Elias felt an unexpected warmth bloom in his chest. The nurse's eyes held his gaze, gentle yet commanding. "Do not misunderstand," she said softly. "The word is not casual. You are part of this now." Elias's mind raced. Part of this, him. Just a human? He glanced around the shimmering chamber, at the glowing crystals, at the alien architecture, and realized he was not the strongest here, not the fastest, not the most skilled. But maybe his presence mattered in a way he had never understood. He took a deep breath, trying to steady the whirlwind of thoughts. The queen's eyes never left him. The nurse stood beside him, calling him spouse in the quietest, most deliberate way. And for the first time in his life, Elias felt the weight of destiny pressed gently on his shoulders. He didn't know what was coming next. He didn't know what role he would play in this alien world. But he knew, with every beat of his human heart, that nothing would ever be the same again. Elias stayed in the chamber, unable to tear his eyes from the queen. She lay there, her body floating gently on the platform, fragile yet regal. The scars from the recent battle were clear across her limbs and chest, subtle glows of alien tissue repairing themselves. Every movement she made seemed deliberate, controlled, as if even the smallest twitch carried weight. Elias felt a mix of awe and fear. Here was a being who could command entire worlds. Yet she seemed almost delicate, almost human in her vulnerability. The nurse hovered near him, her hands glowing softly with healing energy. "Commander," she said, her voice calm but serious, "her injuries are severe. Only steady, careful presence can aid her recovery. She will sense fear. Do not falter." Elias nodded, swallowing hard. He felt the responsibility settle in his chest, heavier than any armor he had ever worn. Despite being human, despite being far weaker than these beings in raw power, He realized his presence mattered. His choices could tip the balance between life and death, not just for the queen, but for the empire she represented. The queen's eyes opened slowly. They glimmered with countless colors, shifting and swirling like distant nebulae. Elias instinctively lowered his gaze, not out of fear, but out of respect. She studied him, as if reading the very essence of his being. Then, faintly, almost imperceptibly, a smile curved her lips. It was brief, fleeting, but enough to make Elias's heart skip a beat. The nurse spoke softly, almost in a chant. She senses your courage. Your presence steadies her. That is rare. Elias didn't know what to say. His courage didn't feel extraordinary, it felt ordinary, instinctive. But the nurse's words carried weight. To these beings, perhaps human instinct and will were something they could not replicate. Suddenly, the chamber trembled. Alarms blared, piercing the serene hum of the ship. Red lights flashed across the crystalline walls. Elias's pulse raced. The ship's sensors detected intruders approaching the docking bay. The queen stirred weakly, her many limbs trying to rise, but her injuries held her down. Elias glanced at the nurse. Her eyes were sharp, scanning the readings. "Commander," she said quickly, "you must protect her." "I cannot." Without hesitation, Elias moved to the edge of the platform, positioning himself between the queen and the approaching threat. His mind raced, but his body reacted. Years of human training, human reflexes, and human determination converged in this one moment. The intruders burst through the outer docking corridor, strange, shadowy figures with energy weapons glowing ominously. They did not expect Elias, a single human, to stand between them and the queen. They hesitated, just enough for him to act. Using a combination of quick thinking and improvised cover, he dodged, blocked, and countered. Each move was unpredictable, chaotic to the alien eye, yet precise in its purpose. The nurse hovered near the queen, muttering healing chants and protective barriers. Elias caught glimpses of her watching him, her eyes wide with a mixture of admiration and something else he could not name. Every shot he deflected, every intruder he slowed, seemed to strengthen the bond between them, human and alien, fragile and strong, trust forming without a word. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, the intruders retreated, their weapons failing against the human's quick mind and sheer audacity. The chamber fell silent once more. Red lights faded, leaving only the soft, soothing glow of the floating crystals. The queen's voice echoed faintly through the chamber, weak but clear. "You defended me. My trust is yours." Elias's chest tightened. He had risked everything, yet her words, simple and alien as they were, carried the weight of an entire civilization's acknowledgement. The nurse stepped closer, her hands glowing softly. "See, Commander," she said gently, "human courage is not always in strength or numbers. It is in choice, in will, in the heart. You have that in abundance." Elias looked at the queen, at the nurse, and realized for the first time how fragile yet extraordinary this moment was. He had come expecting duty. Instead, he had found meaning. And he knew, deep inside, that this was only the beginning. The alarms had barely faded when Elias realized that protecting the queen was more than just holding his ground. The ship itself was alive in ways he had never seen, its walls pulse faintly, reacting to the recent battle, while the air shimmered with energy he couldn't yet understand. Every instinct in him screamed to move carefully, yet every fiber of his being urged him to act. Humans thrived on unpredictability, and for once, that trait could mean the difference between survival and devastation. The nurse hovered beside the queen, her hands glowing as she whispered protective chants. "Do not underestimate them," she said softly, nodding toward the intruder's path. "They will return, and they will not expect a human to stand against them." Elias's lips twitched. He had never considered himself extraordinary. But now, standing beside these beings, he felt the strange, heavy power of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. And then the warning lights flared again. The ship's sensors detected movement outside the chamber. A squad of alien invaders, larger and faster than before, were attempting to breach the inner corridors. The queen remained weak, unable to rise. Without hesitation, Elias grabbed a nearby energy baton from the wall, a weapon he barely understood, and stepped toward the corridor. The intruders arrived swiftly, moving in perfect formation, their glowing eyes scanning for threats. Elias's first instinct was to back away, but something deeper inside him took over. Humans were unpredictable. They could improvise, adapt, and act in ways that no other species could anticipate. He lunged forward, using the baton to deflect their energy blast, twisting and rolling in ways that were chaotic yet effective. The intruders faltered, surprised by the sheer audacity of a lone human defending the queen. The nurse's voice floated over the hum of the battle. "Commander, your movements, they are irregular, yes, but precise. You are Remarkable, Elias felt a rush of warmth. The kind that only came when someone saw the effort behind every choice. Her admiration was quiet, subtle, yet profound. And it strengthened his resolve. One intruder broke formation, charging directly at the Queen's platform. Elias reacted instinctively, positioning himself between the threat and her fragile form. He pushed the intruder aside, absorbing the recoil from the energy strike. Pain shot through his arm, but he didn't falter. Humans endured, humans adapted, and humans acted when it mattered most. The battle stretched on, each wave of intruders testing him in new ways. Elias relied on instinct and creativity rather than sheer strength. He used the corridors, the floating platforms, and even the ship's energy flows to his advantage. Every move was a combination of improvisation and courage, something no alien could have predicted. Finally, the intruders retreated, their strategy shattered by one human's relentless determination. The chamber fell silent once more, the hum of the ship's energy soothing the tension that still clung to Elias's skin. He looked at the Queen, who floated gently, her eyes now soft and grateful. "You fought for me," she said, her voice weak but filled with awe. "Not because you had to, but because you chose to." Elias swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words. The nurse stepped closer, her glowing hands brushing against his arm in a gesture of warmth. "Humans," she said softly, "your strength is not in power nor in numbers. It is in heart and choice and courage that cannot be calculated. Today, you have proven this to us all for the first time." Elias truly understood what the nurse had meant. Humans were fragile, yes, but humans were capable of moments of bravery that no alien machine, weapon, or mind could replicate. In this chamber, surrounded by beings far older and stronger than he could imagine, Elias felt something rare: recognition, respect, and a quiet sense of belonging. The Queen's gaze lingered on him, unblinking, almost as if she were imprinting his image into memory. Elias straightened, exhausted but proud. For the first time, he realized that being human was not a weakness, it was a gift, one that could stand against even the most impossible odds. And somewhere beside him, the nurse smiled, softly whispering once again, "Spouse." Elias's heart tightened. That single word carried weight, trust, and acceptance. It was not a joke. It was real. After the battle, the ship returned to its quiet rhythm. The soft hum of energy, the gentle glow of floating crystals, and the delicate shimmer of the Queen's platform created an almost magical calm. Elias, exhausted but alert, stayed close to the Queen and the nurse. Every movement, every glance, felt heavier now, charged with unspoken meaning. He realized he was no longer just a visitor, he was part of this fragile, luminous world. The nurse guided him through the chamber, explaining the subtle customs of the Queen's species. They spoke of healing rituals, respect for energy flows, and the delicate balance of life aboard the ship. Elias listened carefully, doing his best to absorb every detail. He felt a strange pride. Humans were often underestimated in the universe, but here, his ability to learn, adapt, and act with purpose mattered more than any physical strength. During one ceremony, the nurse demonstrated a technique to stabilize the Queen's injuries. Her hands glowed brighter than usual, weaving patterns of energy that Elias had never seen. Without thinking, he reached out to mirror her movements. His fingers trembled, but the nurse's calm voice guided him. "Good. You are learning faster than expected," she whispered, her eyes holding his in a quiet, steady gaze. Elias's heart skipped. He had never felt recognized like this before, never felt that his presence mattered so deeply to someone so alien and powerful. Later, as they moved through the chamber together, their hands brushed accidentally. It was a fleeting moment, yet the nurse's eyes softened. She whispered a word Elias had learned to cherish: "Spouse." This time, it was not playful or teasing. It was deliberate, filled with pride and affection. Elias felt warmth flood his chest, a mixture of confusion, joy, and a strange sense of destiny. In that simple word, he felt acceptance, trust, and a connection that transcended species. At night, when the Queen's chamber dimmed and the floating lights cooled, Elias sat by the platform, watching the stars reflected in her eyes. The nurse floated silently nearby, tending to small unconscious tasks. For the first time in his life, Elias felt the weight of responsibility not as a burden, but as an honor. He was human, fragile in a galaxy of giants, yet needed in a way he had never imagined. "Why do you trust me so easily?" Elias asked the nurse quietly, his voice barely audible over the soft hum of energy. She paused, her luminous eyes reflecting the room's soft light. "It is not trust in your species," she said carefully, "but trust in your heart. Humans make choices freely, without pretense. You chose to protect, to act, to endure. That is rare. That is precious." Her words sank into Elias's soul. He realized that, in a universe filled with beings far older, stronger, and wiser than him, his humanity, his very ability to choose and act was what made him remarkable. The bond between him and the nurse deepened in quiet moments. She shared stories of the Queen's victories, her fears, and the delicate politics of her empire. Elias listened, fascinated, learning not just about alien worlds, but about courage, leadership, and loyalty in forms he had never known. The nurse's presence was constant, guiding, protective, and somehow comforting. Every time she used the word spouse, it reminded him that he was not alone, that his humanity had found recognition in a place he never thought possible. Days passed, each one reinforcing the strange, powerful connection forming between human and alien. The Queen's strength slowly returned, her gaze now warm and approving. Elias learned that the smallest human actions, holding steady, showing care, offering choice, could ripple across alien minds like quiet storms. And in those quiet, glowing hours, Elias realized something profound. Courage alone was not enough. Connection mattered, trust mattered, and in a universe of infinite stars, sometimes the simple act of being present, being human, and being willing to care could change everything. He glanced at the nurse, who floated beside the Queen, her eyes bright. Spouse, she said softly again, and this time, Elias felt the full weight of the word, a promise, a bond, a recognition that transcended worlds. The calm did not last. Word of the human protector spread quickly among the alien nobles who governed the Queen's empire. Whispers echoed through crystalline halls, voices sharp with doubt and suspicion. Humans were fragile, unpredictable, and untested in their ways. Why would the Queen allow one to stand by her side? Could she truly trust him? Elias could feel the tension before he even entered the council chambers. Every noble's eyes followed him, calculating, judging. He had faced enemies before, but this was different. Here, judgment was subtle, cutting in ways that could not be fought with weapons. The nurse floated beside him, radiant and unwavering. Her hand brushed lightly against his arm. Do not fear them, she whispered. They will try to break your confidence, to test the Queen's judgment. Stand firm. You are seen, Commander. That is enough. Elias swallowed hard. It was not the first time he had been underestimated, but never had it felt so personal. He was small, human, yet here, that very fact made him a target of scrutiny. The council chamber was vast, its walls gleaming like liquid silver. Nobles sat on levitating platforms, their forms alien and elegant, each a symbol of power and authority. As Elias stepped forward, their collective gaze swept over him like a tidal wave. One noble, taller and darker than the others, leaned forward. Why does a human stand beside the Queen? He demanded, voice sharp and echoing. This species is weak, incapable of comprehending the burdens of leadership. Why allow it near her? Elias felt a knot tighten in his chest. He could have shrunk back, apologized, or explained. But humans had a way of surprising others not with raw strength, but with courage and clarity. He stepped forward, voice steady, heart racing. I am here because I choose to be. I am not strong like you. I am human. But I protect those who need protection. That is enough. Murmurs ran through the chamber. Some voices expressed doubt, others curiosity. The nurse's eyes met his, glowing faintly with approval. She whispered, spouse, a subtle reminder that he was not alone. The word carried weight, grounding him in a sea of alien scrutiny. The Queen stirred atop her platform, her gaze sweeping across the council. Her voice, melodic and commanding, cut through the tension. This human has proven his loyalty. He acted when it was needed, without hesitation, without fear. That alone is worth more than years of titles or power. The nobles shifted uneasily. The Queen's approval was absolute, yet Elias could feel the fragile threads of doubt lingering in some eyes. One counselor rose, attempting to challenge her words. A single human cannot understand the complexities of governance, he said sharply. How can we trust his decisions? Elias's mind raced. He was not a politician. He was not a strategist trained in centuries of alien law. But he did understand loyalty, courage, and choice. Those were human strengths. He stepped forward, meeting the counselor's glare. I do not need to understand every law, every strategy, or every custom. I need to understand this. Protect life. Protect the Queen. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is what matters. A silence fell over the chamber. The counselors had no words to counter a statement so simple, so direct, so undeniably true. Even the most skeptical shifted uncomfortably, realizing the weight of human resolve. The nurse floated closer, her hand brushing his shoulder lightly. You see, she whispered, your presence, your choices, they are already changing hearts. Elias exhaled slowly, relief mingling with pride. He realized that humans were often underestimated not because they were weak, but because their strength came from a place others rarely understood, their hearts, their will, and their courage to act when it mattered most. The queen's eyes softened as she regarded him. Elias felt the quiet bond between them, strengthened by trials, suspicion, and challenge. He had entered the council chamber as an outsider. Now, he stood as someone who had earned recognition not through power, but through unwavering presence and action. For the first time, Elias understood something profound. Courage alone was not enough. To be human was to endure doubt, to stand firm under scrutiny, and to allow the heart to guide action even when others questioned it. And in that moment, amidst the alien nobles and the glowing chamber, he realized he was no longer just a human in their world. He was a symbol of what humanity could offer. Peace was fleeting. The ship's soft hum suddenly shifted, vibrating violently beneath Elias's feet. Alerts flashed red across the walls. The core, the very heart of the ship, was unstable. Energy readings spiked dangerously, threatening to tear the ship apart. The queen stirred weakly atop her levitating platform, but her injuries prevented her from acting. The nurse's eyes widened, a rare flash of alarm crossing her usually calm expression. Elias didn't hesitate. He had no training for alien ship systems, no experience with their energy flows, and yet instinct guided him. "Show me the way," he said, voice steady even as adrenaline surged. The nurse's hands glowed, and she projected a faint energy map of the core's pathways. Elias memorized it in seconds. There was no time for doubt. As he approached the conduit, sparks erupted, the air crackling with raw power. Heat licked at his skin, but he pressed forward. Each step was deliberate, human determination guiding him through chaos. The nurse floated beside him, guiding his hands when he faltered. "Together," she whispered, calling him spouse as if the word itself carried power. Elias's heart tightened. In that moment, he felt the weight of connection, trust, and responsibility heavier than any human mission he had ever undertaken. The energy surges became unpredictable, pulsing like a wild heartbeat through the ship. Elias dove into the conduit, manually rerouting flows, sealing leaks with whatever materials the alien systems allowed. Sparks flew around him, dancing dangerously close, yet his mind worked with clarity. He realized humans had a unique gift, adaptability. No alien could predict the improvisation, the split-second decisions, and the instinctive courage that allowed him to survive this inferno. The nurse hovered closer, her voice calm but urgent. "Focus on the main nodes. Divert the surplus energy toward the stabilizers." Elias obeyed, sweat dripping from his brow. His muscles ached, his lungs burned, but he could not stop. Every moment he paused, the core pulsed more violently, threatening the queen, the ship, and everyone aboard. Suddenly, a violent burst knocked him off balance. He fell hard against the conduit wall, sparks showering around him. Pain shot through his body, but he pushed forward, gritting his teeth. He could hear the faint hum of the queen's consciousness, the fragile rhythm of her life pulsing through the room. He could not fail. Humans were fragile, yes, but sometimes fragility made courage shine brighter. Minutes stretched into eternity. Finally, Elias stabilized the last energy node. The ship shuddered one final time, then settled into a steady rhythm. The air cooled. The glow of the crystal softened. Silence enveloped the chamber. Elias fell to his knees, exhausted, every muscle screaming. Yet the weight of relief and triumph washed over him. The nurse floated beside him, her glowing hands brushing gently against his arm. "You saved us," she said, her voice filled with awe. "Not just the queen, but the entire ship. Your heart, your courage. It is extraordinary." Elias swallowed hard, overwhelmed by both exhaustion and the depth of her words. The queen's eyes opened fully, brighter now, her strength returning. She looked at him, her gaze filled with something deeper than gratitude, respect, recognition, and trust. "You risked everything. For us," she murmured. "For life itself. That choice defines you." Elias felt a warmth bloom in his chest. Humans had endured countless challenges in their short lives, but never had he felt the weight and honor of such recognition. He glanced at the nurse, whose eyes glimmered softly. "Spouse," she whispered again, a single word carrying centuries of trust, pride, and connection. Elias felt the bond between them deepen, stronger than before. In that moment, he realized that being human capable of sacrifice, courage, and choice was not a weakness, but a power the universe could never ignore. For the first time, he understood something profound. Bravery was not just in strength or speed. It was in willingness to act when others could not. It was in heart, in spirit, and in trust. And in that quiet, glowing chamber, Elias finally felt that he belonged not just in this alien world, but in something larger, something eternal. Weeks had passed since Elias had saved the ship and stabilized the queen. The once skeptical nobles now watched him with cautious respect, though some still whispered behind their hands. The human who had arrived as an outsider had become something more, an emblem of courage and choice. A symbol that even a fragile species could change the fate of worlds. Elias stood at the edge of the main chamber, the glowing crystals reflecting his tired but determined face. Beside him floated the nurse, calm, glowing, and proud. She brushed her hand lightly against his shoulder. "Spouse," she whispered, the word carrying not casual warmth, but full recognition. Elias felt the weight of it in his chest, a bond that transcended species and reason. The queen's voice echoed through the chamber, clear and commanding. "Today, we honor someone who has proven that strength is not always measured in power. It is measured in courage, in choices, and in loyalty." The nobles shifted, some still hesitant, but most listening in awe. This human has acted where others feared. He has protected life, endured danger, and shown compassion. Let this be known: humanity's heart is a force to be reckoned with. A murmur of astonishment ran through the chamber. Aliens who had never encountered humans closely before now saw what Elias had always known humans could endure, adapt, and inspire. His small, fragile form had stood against forces far greater than himself. Not with raw strength, but with will, intelligence, and heart. One noble, the tallest and most skeptical, finally stepped forward. His eyes, once sharp with doubt, now softened. "Perhaps we underestimated them," he admitted, his voice low. Elias met his gaze steadily. He didn't boast. He didn't need to. His actions had already spoken louder than words ever could. The queen's eyes lingered on him, her gaze deep and luminous. "You are more than an ally," she said softly, yet every word carried weight. "You are a protector, a partner, and a bridge between our species." Elias's chest tightened. He had never felt such recognition before, not from a human leader, not from any world he had walked upon. But here, among beings he had feared and revered, he had found respect, acceptance, and trust. The nurse floated closer, her eyes bright with pride. She reached out and lightly touched his hand. "Your kind is fragile, yet fearless. You act not because you must, but because you choose to. That is rare and precious." Elias smiled softly, feeling a warmth he had never known. That simple word, spouse, had carried him through danger, doubt, and chaos. Now, it carried belonging. The chamber quieted. Aliens from countless worlds had gathered to witness this recognition. Some knelt, some bowed, all acknowledging the human who had proven that courage, heart, and choice mattered as much as strength or age. Elias looked around at the glowing forms, the floating crystals, and the queen, and felt the rare, profound joy of being seen, not for his race, not for his strength, but for the essence of who he was. Finally, he turned to the queen and the nurse. I never expected this," he said quietly, voice trembling with a mixture of awe and humility. The queen's smile was gentle, but commanding. "You did not act for recognition. That is why it matters. You are human, yes, but also extraordinary. That is the gift you bring to our worlds." The nurse pressed her hand to his chest gently. "Spouse," she said again, this time with certainty, pride, and deep affection. Elias's heart swelled. He had joked once, a careless word in a moment of tension, and yet it had become something real, something eternal. He was not just a human. He was a partner, a protector, and a bridge across stars.